Hello and welcome to this program, The Bible Journey, the Holiness Season, the book of Leviticus. Today we look at Leviticus chapter 15. And with me on set are our dear pastors. First of all is Pastor John Kabira Wakabira. Welcome, Pastor, to the show.
Asante sana.
And we also have Pastor Dan Abuya. Welcome, Pastor.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have Pastor Peter Nyaga. Welcome, Pastor.
Most grateful.
Thank you very much. And Pastor Peter Nyaga, if you can lead us in a word of prayer.
Okay, let's pray. Our gracious Father in heaven, we thank you so much once again. Every time we sit to discuss the Bible, you've been so faithful. And one more time, we invite you to be with us, Lord, as we begin today, that you can guide us and be with our viewers. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Remember that you can always connect with us on our social media handles indicated at the bottom of your screen. Now, into the book of Leviticus chapter 15, it's about the laws concerning bodily discharges. And I guess we've been referring to this even as we are looking at, was it chapter 13? That's when we even refer to something here.
Chapter 12.
Chapter 12, actually. Chapter 12. Yeah. So chapter 15 speaks about bodily discharges. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. And this shall be his uncleanness in regard to his discharge, whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is topped up by his discharge, it is his uncleanness. Every bed is unclean on which he who has a discharge lies, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean." Can I have your views, Pastor Nyaga, on those, especially those three verses?
Well, thank you. I think we are still centered on the health issues because the whole you is a holy you. I think that's what we've been talking about. And God is not, taking any chances with our health. He's educating us how to take care of our bodies. And there are discharges. Now, maybe what I need to highlight in summary before we dive into the issues, there are discharges here which would be as a result of diseases. And those days, because of the level of scientific invention which was there then, they would not be able to tell exactly what diseases there is. So if you see, as he says now, this kind of discharges coming out of man, the first thing to do is to start addressing it. It could be normal or abnormal, but then it involves somebody to check so that you are declared whether it's something that you need to get worried about or not something not to get worried about. We have diseases like gonorrhea and those kind of diseases that if you suffer from such diseases, you have discharges as a man. And so for health issues, then whenever you see these kind of things, you are unclean so that you cannot be dealt with unless you're declared unclean. So if you're unclean, then those issue of, again, isolating you and avoiding spread of diseases, those measures started being taken care of so that if in case it was like sexually transmitted disease and you're declared unclean, it means you cannot engage sexually. Because you can't get in contact with the people. So it was a way of avoiding the spread and transmitting these diseases from one person to another. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes, Pastor Abuya.
Right, yeah. This is one of those other startling, if not interesting, chapters in this holiness code. But the principle and the underlying principle are still, it runs through the thread that God desires us to be clean, He desires us to be holy, He desires us to be in a state where we can be able to engage with Him freely. Do you know the baggage? Do you know the baggage of having some secretion? Maybe you have a discharge. I recently read in social media, one of a media personality in our country, talking about the pain of the monthly menses of a woman. If it catches you unaware, for example, you are walking and your skirt leaks through. You'll see a woman seated by the park. But it's not because they are resting, but it's because maybe they are waiting for a good Samaritan to pass by and give them a lesso, or send them maybe to get some sanitary towels. So it robs you of the freedom to be you holistically, so that you can be able to have full fellowship with your God. God is addressing this, right?
Yes.
For me, let me say two things. Number one, prevention is better than cure.
All right.
That is what these people are learning from God's instructions. God wants this issue handled before it gets far. As soon as you see a discharge, you deal with it there and then. You don't know. That is why there are issues about touching somebody else, touching something else. That is number one. Secondly is, every time it's an issue of uncleanness, that is when a solution comes. A solution is only possible if you accept the outcome that you're unclean. Many of us, in a haste to not to be seen as unclean, hide our flaws, and therefore we will die with them. The best thing is always to accept that you are unclean. You know, sometimes we do not need to look at judgment as a very bad thing. It gives you a chance for correction.
Amen.
If you do not accept your mistakes, you will never get a chance for reconciliation, to be accepted back, to be, when the Bible says the wages of sin is death, it's because you're quiet. But we thank God, because that whosoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. Even if you've got sin, there is a solution that is provided that can be able to make you clean. And I believe that is what now God is trying to pass. That number one, let's prevent before it becomes worse. And number two, if it's already happened to you, there are steps He's put in place. You're not hopeless. That once you accept you are unclean by the discharge you have, then all is lost on you. No. He says there is a means to be able to make you clean, to cleanse you. After healing, there is a provision for healing much later. There is a provision that is there for someone who is unclean. It's always like unfair, how we say, there are 99 sheep and one that is lost. Nobody discusses about the 99 that is clean. We discuss about the one that is lost. Why? Because that is the one that needs that needs restoration again. So in essence, for me, I'm seeing as a God who is looking at us as default sinners.
And He says not only he, but also what he touches is unclean, Pastor Dan.
This is an equalizer. You remember chapter 12? That episode where I know in the mind of a viewer, most viewers, we started off with, no, this is wrong. This is patriarchal, this is a chauvinistic God. Now look at this. I think now somebody should be clapping, we got there too. So really the whole point was not about demeaning or demonizing women then, but now we see what the issue is. It is about issues. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female.
You have your own issues.
If you have your own issues. And now here, quite literally, there is an issue. You have your own issue. As a male, you are unclean. Look at the extent, how it permeates, it runs through. Like, every bed is unclean. Not only the bed is unclean, if you pass by
and touch it
and accidentally touch it, you become unclean. Anything associated with it is unclean. There is no taking chances here. Once again. So let us address the issue always. God is trying to save his people from any unforeseen. I like the way Pastor John put it. Prevention is better than cure. Who knows? Who knows this issue of yours is contaminated, is contagious.
Contagious.
Yeah, it has some germs. So I'm excited that our God, several millennia, thousands of years before the breakout of HIV/AIDS, for example, we already have got an antidote here, right?
I'm looking at God who is saying, in other words, what has light to do with darkness?
Okay. Right.
Because the extent to which he goes deeper into, asking people to keep away from the unclean.
Right.
Including, like even verse 5, even sitting, verse 6, he who sit on anything on which he who has the discharge sat shall wash his clothes. I mean, it's just saying there's no way light and darkness can be together. And we have to bring this other aspect of should Christians keep away from the heathens? Should Christians keep away from sinners? How should we mingle? Because, we say bad company ruins good morals. And again, of course, I'm quoting verses, and we say don't be unequally yoked with, and all these things. And there's a debate on then how should we as Christians
relate with them,
relate with those who are not Christian, and we have the component of evangelism. But I think the principle here is, if you are a believer, you are Christian, you love God, you have nothing whatsoever to have a fellowship with a sinner. And I think, to me, that is what I'm drawing out of this. Because anyone who has been declared unclean is unclean. And everything that he has is unclean. And so we need to know how to relate with our brothers and sisters, not to use the need to relate to them as an excuse for us to have a fellowship with sin.
So you are saying that relating is not equal to fellowship?
It's not equal to fellowship. You see, the point I'm driving at is the need to keep away.
Right.
The need to avoid yourself from being contaminated. Touching and sitting and from that which is been declared unclean.
Yeah, keep in mind the element of evangelism.
You become
talked
unclean.
about.
You become unclean. You see, not everyone who is not a Christian is unclean. But there are acts of these people, there are behaviors of these people that you look at them, you say, this is not godly. So you don't contaminate yourself with those kind of things. I mean, you don't reach out to people, a prostitute, having sex with them.
You're reaching out.
You're reaching out.
Wow, how effective is that?
You see,
Right.
So even when we have a need to mingle with the sinners so as to show them Christ, this is a guiding principle. The issue of contamination is key here. The issue of you becoming unclean because you have dealt with an unclean person is very key. And so we have to draw lines, even as we mingle and as we evangelize, so that we don't evangelize in a way that we end up being like the world. And I think that's what the church actually has done. This is a compromise. We have so much invited the world into the church in the name of reaching out to the world. And the church is weak.
You cannot evangelize by being clean so that you look like them.
Yeah.
You evangelize by being clean so that they are attracted.
They are attracted.
They're like, I want to be
You
clean.
don't conform to their pattern.
You don't conform to their patterns.
Now, in verses...
Sorry, before you go, I just wanted to put an angle that I feel disturbs the world today. The issue of men being able to speak out. It's like a taboo. Ladies go to gynecologists. Rarely do you hear about men seeking professional help. Here is a chapter that also concerns men knowing themselves enough to seek advice. The reason as to why there is a spread of diseases today is because men want to closet their problems.
Wow.
I'm saying that because in my life also as a counselor, many men are dying because they do not want to acknowledge that they could be sick.
Right.
They are getting into self-healing, trying to medicate themselves. Our reproductive system is as worse as the same for ladies when it becomes affected. But very few men are willing to go seek professional help. This is my call out to anyone. It's okay for a man to seek professional help. It is okay for a man to go and say, I have a problem.
Actually, the pastor says manly. It's man enough to seek for.
I'm saying that because I know it
That's a
disturbs
man.
so many of us.
Right.
Yeah. Even me, it disturbs me quite a lot.
Issues
yes.
like prostate cancer.
Yes,
by the way,
yes,
for
yeah,
men
yeah,
especially.
something like that.
We never go for checkup of the.
We are used to, as a man, I will handle it on my own, in your own way. And that's why maybe men are dying in higher numbers than women, because what? We do not want to accept.
Earlier,
For
right.
a man here to accept that he has a discharge and go be declared unclean, with all that mentality, it meant he had to be man enough. Let me use his words. He had to be man enough to accept he has, and look at this, including sacrifice in the end, it had to be something public. For us to accept publicly that we are sick has been an issue. Personally, I always say I don't go to hospital. I always say, I'll wait for the Sabbath to get well. That is how I always comfort myself. Or rather, we are brought up in an African setting.
The Sabbath is.
No, honestly, we are brought up in an African setting where mwanaume ni kuvumilia.
Yeah.
And so from that on, by the time you realize you have got prostate cancer, I was even told men get affected by breast cancer. That is what I was surprised. Men get affected by breast cancer.
Yeah.
We, HIV AIDS, men are spreading it out because they do not want to accept that I could be sick.
Right.
There's so much. So my call will be, if we'll even go the biblical way, we'll solve a lot of issues because we are infecting our wives, we're infecting people who should support. So you'll see here
sometimes without even knowing, because we've not gone for checkup, so we don't know we are sick. And sometimes we die of diseases that maybe don't kill, if I would use that term.
Ideally, they say sexually transmitted diseases, if realized early, can be able to heal. But it's because of this manly culture, maybe, no, I'm okay, or it's embarrassing. Rarely will you see by the men lining up. In our hospital here at Central Church, Better Living, whenever the gynecologist comes, you'll not see men. You'll always see women. Don't we get sick? But it's because maybe this chapter also is a call out to men, also to go out and accept that you also get sick. Your reproductive system also gets sick. You need professional help.
Well, let me read these verses as we continue with the discussion. And whoever, that is in verse 11, and whomever the one who has the discharge touches and has not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. The vessel of earth that he who has the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes, and bathe his body in running water. Then he shall be clean. On the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves. Okay, before I come to the sacrifice, which we'll need to talk about, Pastor Dan, what did you say about that?
There was needed in the camp of the Israelites the highest levels of hygiene. Even before we draw the spiritual elements from this, physically, because these are actually physical requirements, right? Before we spiritualize it. I want us also to measure on the fact that these were actual things that were needed to be done. Imagine moving with a crowd of people. Pastor puts it at 1.5 million often. I normally say about more than 2 million, about 2 million people. Imagine what kind of chaos. In the desert, they don't have these common modern day conveniences. Can you imagine the kind of mess you're going to have there? In nowadays, when we have campsites and all that, sometimes we've had chaos until even public health officers, they threaten closure. They are like, okay, you know what? This is a health, hazard at time. So there was needed the highest level of hygiene within the camp. No wonder later on, when you're reading about the arrangement of the camp, I think it's Prophet Balaam, who declares when he's looking at the way the camps are arranged, and he says how beautiful are your camps. You know the only way they could achieve that, because they were neatly, very clean, neatly arranged. Neat, the camps were clean, as in physically clean before even spiritually clean. That needed some kind of serious, sanitation prefect. I don't know. So God is giving out an entire code here to help out. Water, it was their only disinfectant maybe they had. You know, right now, nowadays, we have hand sanitizers and all. You just take quickly, you sanitize. We have wipes, hand wipes and all that, yeah. So water was the cleansing agent.
And still, it remains to be the most purest purifier.
The best, yeah. And even later on, even spiritually, actually, remember Christ when he's washing the disciples' feet. And Peter is like, okay, no, me, I want to be baptized all. So he tells him, you've had a bath in water, you are clean. You're already clean. And so you have part with me. All I need is to rinse you. So water is a cleansing agent. We needed the camp to be very clean because it would avoid a lot of issues so that God achieves his agenda of having a people who can serve him and worship him.
And he says also in verse 16, we'll come back to the other bits later, if any man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his body in water and be unclean until evening.
Right.
And any garment and any leather on which there is semen, it shall be washed with water and be unclean until evening. Pastor, getting tougher.
Yes, including verse 18 anyway. It's the same thing. Also, when a woman lies with a man and there is an emission of semen, they shall bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Okay, we got a chance to be at that desert scenario.
Right.
That place is hot, honestly.
Right.
That place is, indeed, if one would be able to lie with a woman, it will be something very sweaty, honestly. It will be something that does not come out well. That is why Deuteronomy says a nocturnal experience, like it will best be done in the evening because of normal way when human work.
So it doesn't say unclean until morning.
Until evening.
If it's daytime.
Well, we'll get here. Deuteronomy, I was just reading to compare. Deuteronomy 23:10 was talking about some occurrence in the night, something that you do at night. Well, it's because of the same ideal that Pastor Dan is trying to say. Cleanliness. At this point, imagine it's all over your clothes. A semen is all over your clothes. How do you even begin to explain to children what it is? How do you even begin? What picture are you trying to draw to others? That is what God was trying to do was to contain it. Remember, these are tents. It's not a 3-bedroomed house. It's not. It's not something that you'll be able to say like you can contain.
Yeah.
The Lord wanted. I believe. I'm just trying to speculate in this. The Lord wanted cleanliness that will make people picture God in the end. When let's say semen is all over. Somebody who is familiar with it will be thinking, what has happened? Your mind is already polluted even before you've begun.
Right.
When I see my neighbor in that kind of a condition, my mind is polluted. It's like a pornographic scene now, if I will be able to be able to. What the Lord was saying is, I think you are looking for Hebrews 13 verse 4.
All right.
That is what you are looking for.
Right, yeah.
That it's undefiled.
Right.
It's something that is good, but it's only within the confines of the two of you. As soon as it becomes public, now it becomes something else.
Let's first of all take a short break on this discussion, the Bible journey. We are coming back shortly. Welcome back to this discussion, the Bible journey. We are into the book of Leviticus, chapter 15, and it's all about discharges from the body. And we have looked at the man extensively in our first bit. Now we'll be proceeding on, especially to the woman, that is in this second bit. But Pastor Nyaga wanted to also add something, especially on verse 16 to 18 especially.
Yeah, these are, in our society, I think sex and sexuality is not a subject to be discussed during the daytime.
It's one to be
Tonight,
discussed
anyway.
during the
It's a
night.
night subject, and I see it today. So I'm a bit reluctant talking about this. But anyway, verse 16, if any man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his body in water and be unclean until evening. And then also when a woman lies with a man and there is an emission of semen, they shall bathe in water. I think just to add on what Pastor John said, I also want to look at this as a way of controlling the sexual activities. One, especially in verse 16, if any man, doesn't specify if it's talking about husband or who. Looking at our children and they are growing in the adolescent stage, they're involved in sexual activities. How will they learn that they need to keep off from women and engaging in sex? When they've been taught about the laws of uncleanness, and then they know if you engage in a sexual activity, there will be emission of semen. Then you have to bathe and be unclean for the whole day. Your parents will know. Your parents will know.
As you did something.
You did something.
What did you do?
So what did you do?
Right.
And so this would be a scare to control these young people from engaging in illicit sex activities. I'm looking at it from that perspective. And also again, the same thing would be for even the married people. Because again, the point is people feared the laws of uncleanness. You didn't want to be declared unclean. And whether people knew or not, it was in your mind psychologically. When you have done something that makes unclean, you are guilty in your mind. So if a husband engages himself in extramarital issues of sex, and then he is unclean for a whole day, and even though he comes back to the house, consciously he is guilty of that act because he knows he's unclean. He has to bathe, he has to be unclean for the whole day. So these things would keep people away from unauthorized sex activities. I'm looking at it from that point, just to add on what...
But it doesn't mean that, like especially for verse 18, it is not in any way trying to cast sex within marriage as wrong.
No.
As in there's nothing wrong at all, that sex is a God-given gift. But then it needs to be enjoyed in its proper context. Now, not only even the right person. We talk always about the right person. Now, even context. This issue brings context. You can't just, yes, you say that you're married, and then maybe
Publicly.
Publicly. You can't. You can't just say that you're married, but in your house, even the conditions is traumatizing even to the children. So I think this brings to the fore that sex, much as it is given as a divine gift, the context needs to be proper, it needs to be holistic so that you can enjoy it and also so it doesn't hurt others.
Any other
Yes.
person.
Right, yes.
Now let's go to the women from verse 19. If a woman has a discharge and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything that she lies on during her impurity shall be unclean. Also everything that she sits on shall be unclean. Let me start with Pastor Kabira.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Once again, we get into women. This is a men-only cast. Sometimes I feel like I wish a woman would be able to speak at this point. But the Bible, because we cannot really understand exactly what she goes through at this particular point. When she has a discharge from her body, which is blood, in those days, there were no sanitary towels. You can imagine that kind of a scenario. How did they solve these things? They would probably have to sit in the whole day because it was that uncomfortable. They did not have the means to be able to say, tampons. I hear people have tampons or a cup that absorbs all these things. So with all that imagery that I am trying to draw, try and imagine a woman who is able to do all her daily duties. How was it possible? It was actually very hard for her to be able to do her normal duties day by day. So I believe God offers a protection for that kind,
Amen.
such that she will be comfortable to be in a particular place. And once she is okay, once we assure her and it is done, she will be able to resume her duties. She's not being sent away. She's not being told she's an outcast. All that is she's impure in the context that this is blood. Remember, we talked about blood being life, and life is being lost. It is also a solemn moment for her to remember, and for even a man to be able to remember that this is life. We are talking about the life of another human being. You do not interfere with the life of another human being.
Sure.
Life being symbolized by blood at this particular point. So for me, I feel God was very gracious to ladies in a very huge way, because the only time man was given an exemption was when he had a discharge. That is basically when he was sick. But for a woman, when she gives birth, when she's on her menses, when she's sick, basically it looks like the women are the ones who will rest much more than actually the man, in real sense.
I like
of course,
that.
which is very true, because caste
Right.
is the ground for
right.
the man.
That's right.
For the man, it's only, I think, when he was sick. So for me, I feel God was very gracious to the ladies in a huge way, in which we should be able to even respect up to today. That when they have a discharge of blood, give them the freedom to be able to be comfortable. For some, it comes very painful. I understand it comes as something that is very painful. To others, it's very embarrassing. To others, it's very discomforting. So in that, they need time to be able to break and be able to stay on their own. I think so.
As you come in, Pastor Nyaga, let me just add this verse, verse 25. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of her customary impurity, or if it runs beyond her usual time of impurity, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean. Yes.
Yeah, actually, that's why I wanted to come and say verse 19 specifically is addressing the customary impurity, the monthly issues of blood. And I would want to, be excited more when I look at the set days for such a woman. It's 7 days. We had discussed this earlier in our earlier episodes. And I remember Pastor John saying that I think there's a company, I'm yet to know which company is that, that now they're giving women off during their menstrual days.
Once a week, every
Once a
month.
week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, a whole week. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I see that God considered this. Although they say 3 to 4 days, but we all know, because you stay with women, I think they have their peak again after the 7th day. So I
And
see.
others take up to 7 days.
Yes, actually.
Right.
So I think it is telling us men, I'm talking now as a man, because many times we think, okay, this is a monthly issue, it's nothing big about it. And even when women are going through this, we don't seem to care so much. Some of them, as Pastor said, they go through a lot of pain. And others actually don't talk about that pain because, of stigma and, embarrassment. But I think as men, we need to be deliberate and look out to our women during this time. We seek to understand when they're going through these periods and seek to give them support. Because many of them are silent. We have our sisters, we have our daughters there, we have our wives. But I think if we have to borrow from God, because if a woman has a discharge and the discharge from her body is blood, that means menstrual, she shall be set apart 7 days. She needs to rest.
And I'm just imagining connecting with the, that is verse 20 what? The one which is irregular now. If it goes beyond-
26.
25.
Verse 25.
25, yeah,
yeah.
25.
Because some even have got irregular flows. There are some, and once again, that was a challenge. This panel is men only. So we can't purport to fully speak for our sisters. But, from the little that we are able to share, there are some, their flow is irregular. There are some even, it is month-long. Some disorders.
Yes.
Right here. So it is challenging. It is very challenging. But I'm even imagining now, I'm thinking of the story of the woman who had a flow
For 12 years.
12 years.
12 good years. Can you imagine? And you're unclean for all those 12 years. That is devastating.
And she was. That is
was
why
unclean.
no one would admit her in that congregation.
That is right.
That way she wouldn't even speak about a sickness. She had to come, secretly
Bless
to
the
touch the cloth of Jesus.
Right here.
But I'm also looking from this text and comparing with what you're talking about. And I look at the cervical cancer. where many times women will have to go with issues of blood because of these kind of cancers. And they're there. And actually, people isolate them because when they start smelling bad because of that blood, and people stigmatize them, and they think they are so careless. Yet, God is calling us out to look out for these people and give them support. I think the point I'm raising here that we need to look out for our sisters and our daughters and our mothers and our wives and give them support
them
during these moments.
Amen.
Yeah,
Look,
sure.
you know, the careless language we use, you're behaving like a woman on her menses. I think the language should stop.
Yeah.
Should,
Both with,
yeah.
because it is not only demeaning, but also we miss out the point. Look at what God is doing. God is dignifying. I don't know, I hope our viewers are understanding that actually in all these laws, God is protecting, is actually dignifying them.
Yeah.
Because now the woman is in a state, Nick, you come and you can't tell your wife to, where's my food, woman? Because, well, I'm unclean. Right, yeah. So, you know, she's like the boss now at that time. And if you have to eat in the house, somehow you have to sort her. Right here. So these languages that we use, we talk of, we kind of actually demonize. We demonize, you know, why do you look like you're on hormones or whatever? If a woman, maybe she's silent, you are like, are you on your I think this is really something very relevant for centuries, many centuries later. That we should
And of course, you know, of course, there is one bit that we had skipped about the sacrifice, which Pastor Kabira will lead us in that. But of course, we have 28, which says, "But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take for her," especially combining with this one, "and on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the priest shall offer the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her before the Lord for the discharge of her uncleanness."
Yes, allow me to put it in context of this bleeding woman once again. It is something that is usual for a lady to be able to bleed. But when it becomes too much, now it becomes the opposite of comfortable. It becomes a deterrent. For 12 years, she cannot touch the same thing as somebody else. She cannot stay in the same house as somebody else. She cannot eat like somebody else. Now she has become an outcast. Look at the labeling that happens to this bleeding woman. Some Bibles call her the bleeding woman. They don't even mention her name. You know, if she was so important, we would have a name. But everybody knows us, that bleeding woman. Why?
The woman with the issue of the blood.
The woman with an issue of blood. Some, you know, those are the names that have been labeled her. Why? She went seeking out for help, and people could not be able to help her, and so now they have labeled her. So she's literally become an outcast. And from there on, her only solution was only found in one, in Jesus Christ. She was still so humble that she thought, my issue is supposed to be a normal one. It's a minor one. I don't even need God to address me fully. I only need to touch the hem of his garment. Meaning, I don't think this issue, according to me, is so big. But I know it's a big thing to other people. And so she wanted the help of Christ. And that is why now the sacrifice is able to come in. When she met the ultimate sacrifice, she was made well. It was until that point when her issue of blood, her bleeding, which was irregular, which was not right, which had separated her from her community, her family. For it to be said a woman, she must have been of marriageable age. That is why she's called a woman. It had prevented her from being herself, from doing worship with other people, from getting into the temple. That is what had done to her. But then she found the Savior. She gave herself as a sacrifice to this. She met the ultimate sacrifice, that is himself.
Wow.
So for the men, of course, it was sacrifice. The same about 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons. For the woman also, it was about the 2 turtle doves. Give out a burnt offering, a sin offering, before, to signify that you acknowledge that finally you're pure. You're telling the public that I am pure. You, through the priest, is able to declare you're also pure. from your impurity. In essence, it tells about ourselves and how much a small thing can cause us to be impure once again. What is normal can also become impure to us. What we may think is just random things that we take for granted, including eating. You know, we just take eating as a random thing, as a normal thing, can cause us to be impure, including everything that is human can cause us to be impure. The only solution we have is Christ, of course.
I wanted to come in at your summarize.
Yes.
I hope we
Yeah.
should be summarizing. And go straight to verse that 1, and down there at the end of this chapter. And appreciate a few things there. Verse that 1. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is indisposed because of a customary impurity, and for one who has a discharge, either man or a woman, and for him who lies with her who is unclean. But verse number that 1 is the point I wanted to discuss on. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle. Maybe our viewers forgot, because we've been on this issue of cleanness and defilement, to remind them once again, it is the issue of holiness. We are still in the tabernacle. And all these precautions and measures that are being taken is for one reason, to make sure that the tabernacle is pure, to make sure that the worship is pure, to make sure that the holiness of God is not compromised. And I need to say here that we will need to emphasize more as a church and as a people the need to be clean.
That's what we are doing, right?
And let's come to worship. Let's come before the Lord when we're clean. Don't wake in the morning and you come to church and you're not clean. And when we're talking about clean, it's holistic. All
Physical,
aspects.
outside
We're
and the
dealing with
inside.
physical things here. Dealing with physical things here. Come to church when you're clean. Wash yourself well. Clean yourself well. Brush your teeth. Dress in good.
Wow, all right.
Make sure the socks that you're wearing on Sabbath morning is a clean socks. You know, appear before the Lord clean.
Wow. Amen.
Maybe I will add it's because all this is preparing us for the next chapter,
Right.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
where we will need to go before the Lord as clean, lest we die.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
That was the whole. So from chapter, you remember when we stopped at Aaron and his son's consecration? That was chapter 8.
Yeah.
And then it's like God just introduces randomly laws about
Cleanness.
purity and the cleanness
Right.
and cleanness. All of that is a pretext that takes us all the way to what we'll discuss in the next chapter. So maybe to be able to appreciate next chapter, that is why we've belabored here. It may look as if it's boring stuff, but now it will make sense when we'll be talking about the Day of Atonement. I don't want to preempt that, but all this is like an introduction just before this day, just before what is going to happen. And that is now what 31, 32, and 33 is like a conclusion. You will see, of course, God will insert the Day of Atonement, then continues with the same laws again.
Right.
Because what is it referring to? It's, I need you pure before we continue.
Right.
I need you pure for this day. When you come to meet before me, just like he told the Israelites under the Mount of Sinai, please shower, bathe, change your clothes. You may be asking God, but the Lord sees our heart. You know, that is what everybody says. The Lord sees our
Right.
heart. Why is he concerned about us showering, about sexual relations and all that? When you stand before God, you better be right in all aspects.
Now, Nick, I hope you have a minute or two.
Yes.
Because there's a text here that I thought is important.
Okay.
Verse 24. If any man lies with her, that is during a monthly periods, so that her impurity is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. And I associate that with the chapter we'll see later, chapter 18, verse 19. You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness as long as she is in her customary impurity. May my fellow pastors help me out here. Is it should married people you can't have sex with your wife during a monthly period? That's what I'm saying.
I would say no. Personally, I wouldn't want to do that. Why? That's lack of temperance. But once again, I know out there's a lot of argument. Or it's not about being safe or not. Some things is common sense. One, when women are going through this period, they are not even themselves. Some of, as we have said, some of them even are into a lot of pain and everything. It's like a sick person. To me, you look unreasonable, inconsiderate. I mean, this is your wife. You're with her every other day. And it's just a few days in a month. Why don't give her freedom and support her as she goes through this process? But if you're such a ruthless man and
and you know, it also says on every bed that she lies is also unclean.
So you move from the bed.
Do you move to bedroom B?
It's maybe the viewers will give us the response through what you always say, Facebook and whatever. But for me, I still believe it's about the issue of temperance and putting your mind right before God.
Right.
That is the message I think we are getting. Be physically pure, be spiritually pure, be socially pure, even your own family. Ensure you're still pure, including your wife and children. By the time you're coming before the Lord, there is nothing that can prevent you from listening when God speaks.
when we look at the health component of a woman during a customary period of impurity, then we appreciate we can support her humanly. Not making her feel humiliated.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's
we
quite
need to really support them.
You know, when you run away from her because of the bed and you can't even shake her hand or anything, you're making her feel even
Is she an
devastated.
outcast?
Devastated. But it was okay then because they were avoiding issues of temptations and also avoiding issues of spread of disease in case of she could be suffering from a disease that you are not aware of and so many things. But we have a little bit advanced in terms of, you know, scientific enlightenment. And we're able, the women now are able to take care of themselves and have an hygiene environment during this period of time in a better way than those days. And so we can be able to support them.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. I hope we agree with that, so that we now close.
We'll get more feedback.
Thank you.
Let's see the feedback.
Let's have your feedback and your comments on our social media handles indicated at the bottom of your screen. But I think that we have learned much in terms of the Lord really wants us to be clean, not only spiritually, but also physically. He is so concerned, and that's why he has to talk about addressing our eating and, you know, our discharges and all these things. Is because he's concerned about our whole being, so that we can be holy. God bless you. See you next time.